get a load of it. The United Nations launched its Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, and UN member nations are charged with delivering them by 2030. The Blueprint for People, Planet, Peace and Prosperity, they have just in recent weeks reached the midway point. The Isle of Man is not a UN member nation, so what role does it have in delivering the SDGs? Lecturer, researcher, writer and sustainability consultant Dr. Crystal Cartwheel has.
Oh, I say, excellent. Oh, fantastic. Right, okay, here I go. So I have put, I don't know where I'll put them here. So there are lots of reports. So if anybody's interested in any of the reports that I talk about, most of them are here, and you can have a look through them. I've also brought a copy of the paper that I had published, which is hidden behind a huge paywall, which is really very annoying, isn't it? But if you want to flick through any things, I'll leave that there in case I don't need to look at it. Okay, so this research came about as an open call to papers for a spring of publication on how well the European region is tackling the sustainability goals. It's quite clear they're not going to be met by 2030, but they wanted to just gauge how things were going. So there's a publication for the European region and there's a publication for the other regions around the world. So it's called papers, and I thought, right, okay, this is not a research that is done through, they didn't want any primary data. So it had to be accessible public data that anybody else who wanted to find out about these things could actually get to. So I was just there to link to the web. I know that the Isle of Man does not have to report on how they are progressing towards these goals. So I thought it would be quite interesting to do the Isle of Man, just nobody else might do the Isle of Man. How difficult would it be to get hold of the data? It must be publicly available. Obviously, as you can tell by the title of these slides, it was a little bit more difficult than I thought. So, the 17 sustainability goals. I'm sure you've all seen these before. They interlink with each other, and that's one of the things that I found when I was looking at that. By addressing one, you address other things at the same time. The Isle of Man, as you can imagine, is the Isle of Man is, we have Joe at the back there, a biosphere. So we're very good at a lot of the things where we're collecting data to keep our biosphere, because it's so important, and we do very, very many things very, very well. But the things that aren't necessarily making us look brilliant and making us look good and helping with our biosphere project tend to be sidelined and tend to not be available, really, to find that data. So yes, look, we're doing very well with our GDP. We've got a beautiful country, and we are, to a great extent, working together to create our sustainable future. There's a lot of really good things that we are doing here, but we're not, I'm going to go back to this slide, looking very deeply into the social goals. And the social goals is where we're missing our data. I put this up because it makes me smile. This is to do with collecting data and the type of data that you get and how it can be skewed in certain ways. So I lived in Switzerland for a number of years. Switzerland is ranked in the World Happiness Index really high and has been for a long time. And when I lived there, it didn't quite tally with the conversations that I was having with the people that I was mixing with. And on closer talking to them, it turns out that they're indoctrinated from a very young age to say that everything about their country is great. So when they're asked one-to-one, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? They always goes, brilliant. Love it. We're doing really well. Everything is fantastic. We're not like that. So, I mean, we all live here. So, yes, there are plenty of things that aren't perfect for us. But we only rank 38. And that's because we speak out. You know, if we don't like something, we will go, we don't like this. So if somebody asks us our happiness ranking, we'll go, do you know what? They need to sort this out, they need to sort that out. So we do have to be careful about how we're gathering data as well, and the subconscious biases that people have when they answer these questions and the type of data that we're going to be gathering. Okay, so my main interest after having gone through this process of doing all the research keeps drawing me back to poverty. Poverty is something that affects so many of the other SDGs. It's really important to get some sort of handle on what's going on here, and it's very, very hidden on the Isle of Man. We've got a very acute problem, but you know, there's so much loveliness about, and so much middle classness about, and so many lovely people about. We quite often don't see what's going on. And the main reason we don't see what's going on is that they don't collect data. It's a very big problem, so we can't do it. There was a study by, I've forgotten her title now. She was the head command.
Director of Public Health.
Yeah, Director of Public Health in 2019, and she was very, very concerned that they couldn't measure what they needed to do. They couldn't sort out the public health because they didn't know what's going on in the community. They don't collect the data. They don't have the comprehensive data set to understand the distribution of health outcomes or socio-economic factors across our population. They're inadequate for us to understand inequality, poverty and deprivation, which obviously affects health outcomes and obviously affects how the policies that are being made are going to impact on poverty and health on the Isle of Man. It's not being connected. I was speaking a couple of weeks ago to somebody else in Manx Care, and they know they have this problem, but actually collecting data is difficult to work out what you need to do, how you need to do that, to get the right systems in place, to get the funding to ask for that data, and then they're starting to think about it a little bit, to start to put things in place, but the recruitment for people that are able to go out and collect it, the researchers to bring that data in, is still missing. So we have a lot of missing data. Select Committee on Poverty 2019 reports there if you want to look at it. We don't collect the information that it needs. It should be. The 2019 committee made 8 recommendations. They're also in there. But 6 of them were concerned with gathering data. So you can't make recommendations on how best to move forward if you don't have the data on which to base those decisions. They were agreed by Tynwald in 2019. They agreed they were going to collect this data. The new Select Committee on Poverty in 2021, that made it really hard actually. When I was collecting the data, they had a new Select Committee and they then hid everything that had been done in the other Select Committee behind lots of layers of looking through the Tynwald website. It is there, but they just seem to replace it with this one on the front-facing way that you look at things, so to get hold of it is hard. But they did note that they haven't made progress in implementing recommendations. And that's meant, still, there was no meaningful assessment, no meaningful debate, and we don't have the access to the numbers. So, oh yes, getting carried away with myself. So, when you look through the reports are based a lot on interviews, bringing people in, trying to get that information from them. And so this information is there, but it's there in the likes of the food bank, St Christopher's, things like that. So each of the NGOs and the charities that are working have a lot of information that's not pulled and it's not collected. Now, I do know they are making inroads in trying to get more talking towards these things, but they haven't worked out how to get the data together in one place. So, I struggled to get an update for this. So I couldn't find it anywhere on the Tynwald website. I sent an email to Tynwald and said, can you please tell me, has anything been made to move forward? Because the last that I'd heard, it said when was I doing it? It would be September 2022. Nothing had been done since that recommendation from the Select Committee to look again at collecting data. I did actually eventually struggle and find one thing where they said, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to collect the data that we need in the Household Income Expenditure Survey. But that does not actually address what they promised to do in 2019. So in 2019, they said they were going to adopt the Social Metrics Commission's methodology for trying to get everything that they needed to measure it. So that now what they're going to do, and it goes back to that Switzerland thing, is they're going to ask some people some questions that they may or may not answer. It depends who fills out that survey. And they're only going to gather data from that survey and use that data to then help assess what poverty measures need to be done on the Isle of Man. And that's not sufficient, and that's not what was recommended, and it's not what they agreed on in 2019. So even moving forward, we're not looking to get sufficient amount of data to be able to tackle this. Reports and updates. Okay, so what they actually recommended in the report was to look at relationships and support, health, labour market opportunities, ability to engage, addiction and dependence, and history of trauma. So we can't do that in an income and expenditure report. And we can't do that without working with the different charities and the different bodies that collect this data. We can't do that. We haven't designed any way yet of being able to bring this information in and to be able to have actual data that we can use to address the causes of poverty that we've got on the Isle of Man, which obviously plays into health and obviously plays into sustainable communities. So yes, the relationships and support. I'm part of the One World Centre as well, and social isolation and social networks is an important thing we do try to build and bridge, but it just makes me aware of the fact there is a problem with social isolation in a lot of cases. So we also need, with strained family relationships, we need to be working with with the Samaritans, with cruise bereavement, with things like that, so we can actually see what sort of data we're getting at. They are doing quite a lot of work now on mental and physical health. We'll see when we get that. Mainly mental health. Mental health is quite a big problem. They are working with labour market opportunities and digital skills. So it's not that there is no data available, it's just that it's not collated and it's not usable. I think, if I bring this up here, so at the beginning I address in my paper, so I'm addressing all of the SDGs one by one, and at the top I get I should have put a slide of it, but I haven't, but it's here if you want to see it. There's a table of what's normally collected by the UN. So most countries publish specific data that the UN asked for, and it goes to the UN, there's a website for it, and you can see it published there. So at the beginning of No Poverty, we don't have a poverty head count, no data available. Poverty head count ratio, no data available. Poverty rate after taxes and transfers, no data available. We just don't know. We don't know. So I can't, when I'm reporting on it for this, I can't say precisely what's happening. All I can say is we're missing the information to find out what we need to do.
Sorry, is there a definition of poverty? Is there like a line in the sand?
They did, yeah, in the reports there, they asked for a definition in 2019. They also asked for a definition in 2021. If I find, where is it here, the final, my arms aren't on the phone today, right, so they go through the recommendations, and one of it was report Annalise Tinwald. I can't find it off, but it's in here. But they've decided they're not going to define it. Yeah, it was recommended twice that they define it, but they've decided they're not going to define it. Yeah. 50%. Minimum wage. They're very keen on the minimum wage. That's another thing that they've decided to do, which is a great thing, is to transition to the living wage, which we are going to do over a period of years. That doesn't address a lot of the problems, but it's quite a nice, easy soundbite, isn't it? You know, and it's something where they can say we're tackling that. I'm not going to say it's not a great thing to do, but I think by itself it's not ideal. Right, I'll crack on with this, but I'll look at it. But there is in here them saying no, they're not going to define poverty. It's too complicated. Okay, so there was also a cold, hunger and homelessness in the Isle of Man report done, 2019. And again, it's data needs to be collected, data needs to be collated. We need to have a comprehensive insight into what's going on. Yeah, so again, there's a need for research. And we're lacking researchers, and we're lacking the ability to coordinate and bring this data in so that we can move forward and tackle it. And Howard Quayle in 2016 was already saying we need to collect this data. And then he got these reports underway, the poverty report and the cold, hunger and homelessness plan, and everything that comes back says we just need information. We need information. So the food bank is seeing a huge change in demographic. So it used to be more single people, according to Neil. It used to be particularly older males, but now it's families, and now it's actually people that would consider themselves middle class families. You know, a huge shift. There's been a 29% increase in people that are eligible for free school meals since 2010. That's last year's data. We're looking at 125 households a week. And now they've moved into also providing electric blankets, slow cookers. They're going to try and teach people how to cook basic things. And again, this ties back into health, because if you're on the poverty line, you can't really be picky about what you get to eat, how you look after yourself, and that ties. So the poverty and the health and the zero hunger, this is all interconnected, and the data from all of that needs to come together so we've got something that we can do. One thing that I didn't know until I spoke to Neil is that there are a surprising number of people on the Isle of Man that may not even have a kettle. You know, so you can't just go and say, here's a tin of beans, that's fine. But that presupposes that you've got cooking facilities. You know, it presupposes you might have a microwave for some things. We can't do that. And I think it's a shock to some people to know we have such a, you know, we have a community of people that don't have access to any of those things. It's not talked about. And we're not really putting things together to be able to address that problem. So we do need just a lot of research to find out what's going on, how can we help, and we can't just leave it to places like the food bank that are volunteer run to do it. The government can't address it if they don't know what they're addressing. You know, without solid data about what we're doing, there's not much that we can do to move things forward and make plans on it. So it was only 30th of September, only recently, that the CEO, Neil, was interviewed, and yes, it's the broad demographic of people using it is changing. There's just more using it. So good health and well-being. Again, data capture problem. We're seeing these reports are being done, they're good reports, they're really well-researched, well-written, well-intentioned. Everything is good about the reports. They come to be accepted and then nothing is done. Was this the Michael's report? Yeah, when the Michael's report into healthcare, he didn't want to take it on. And the reason he didn't want to take it on is that there have been several reports and the recommendations then were not acted on. He didn't want to do anything that wouldn't be acted on. They have acted on this, not to the full extent of the recommendations, but he wouldn't take it on unless they made a commitment to do something. So he spotted in 2019, data capture, validation and review needs to become systematic standard. So it makes you think, what is happening when that is not being collected systematically and standard? Why is that? Why is health data and information not being standardised and not being collected and not being used? So we can't build a modern health system without our data caption, our data reviewer. It's just not there. It shouldn't be tolerated any further. But this is what I was saying beforehand. The problem now isn't that people don't want to do something about it, it's how are they going to do it? Who is organising how we are capturing this data and making sure we have people who are qualified to do that, to know what they are doing in that way, it's systematic and where everything is coordinated together so that we know that the data that we've got can be used. So the Quality Care Commission 2022, still exceptionally poor quality data, operational and reporting. The data is not reliable. You can't always find the data that you need. Well, I found this with Tynwald as well. This is managed care, but the data and the information that should be available there to everybody on Tynwald is often behind an awful lot of clicking different things and finding it and hidden away things. So yes, they can say it is there, but it's not easy to access at all. And I'll come back to this later, but the island plan is good. I like the island plan, but the island plan is focused on what we are already doing well. It's got a real focus on increasing the economy, on looking after the biosphere, on doing things that we know we're already doing well, but we'd like to do better. What we're not looking at are the things that we do badly. And we're not looking at it to such an extent that we're just not looking at it. We don't want to know, we don't want to see the figures, we just don't want them there. So we're not looking at it. So we're not making progress, particularly on the things we don't do well. Because we just, Douglas Adams called it the other people field, you know, so
Other people's problems.
Other people's problems, yeah, that's right, yeah, so there could be a big spaceship flying up everywhere, but that's somebody else's problem. Somebody else's, SCP, isn't it? Someone else's problem field, yeah. Mental health. So that is something where we are starting to be very concerned about. Yeah, and we are starting to collect data on this. We are starting to really do something. We realise this is a huge problem. It's a huge problem, and so we are tackling it. It's in the public eye, and there's something that the government is doing on that, because you can't deny those figures. We have a suicide prevention strategy now, and it is using, as things should be, it's multi-groups coming together to tackle this together, sharing information, sharing knowledge, sharing teaching. It's only just started, it's 2023 to 2027. But it's actually using the different agencies together to come and do it. So it's not that as a country we can't do it once we decide we're actually going to, we don't know how it's going to go because it's only just started. But once the problem becomes known, once there's scary data out there, then it's not that we can't tackle it. So that makes me think when I'm looking at the poverty and the homelessness, you know, that there is not the will to do it, and that's why that's not doing that. It's one of the highest rates in the world. It has dropped since then. This wasn't particularly high. They said, at the time they said there were 22, but in the new prevention strategy they've upped that up to 24, and that's very, very funny. So those are the ones where we've really got a lack of data. So these are the ones that we might actually, oh yes. Most people think about that as building, but it's the innovation that I'm looking for. So what I couldn't report on the innovation, which they asked, the UN asked for, is the research, primarily, because we also don't collect any information on a lot of the research that we do, and we don't collate it. So we can't evaluate at all if we've published internationally. So we can't say, oh, we have people here that are doing sufficient research on this, that and the other. So it's all individual stuff. We don't know who's published internationally. We don't collect if we filed any patents for anything. We don't collect information on how many STEM graduates we've got and the gender of those STEM graduates. We don't record research and development expenditures by private companies. We have nothing on the logistics performance index. We don't have anything on the gap in internet access by income. This came up in COVID, didn't it? Because I think people just realised that everybody has access to the internet now. Not sure. Yeah, so what else we got? Reduced inequalities. We don't know what inequalities there are. We don't know if we have gaps that we're not currently addressing. This was hidden. When I published this, there was no access to whether we had a Gini coefficient or Palmer ratio. That's the international way of seeing how our inequalities were. I found it hidden on the report in there on page 35, where they'd gone to the Treasury and said, can you get this information, and that they put it all together. But it's not easily accessible. So I put it in there because I was so excited that I found it. It was like, oh, I've been looking for this information. It was hidden away in the report. So I've worked quite closely with St Christopher's, people that have come out of care. We have a very big problem with inequality with young people that are coming out of care. And keeping them in education, finding just somewhere for them to live. You know, if you leave at 16, you can't get a flat because you've got, or they can maybe get a room in a spot, but it puts you in a stage where you just can't move forward. So we have a very big problem with reduced inequalities. I haven't gone into more detail on that. Should I go into more detail on that?
We're running about 15 minutes after we should have finished.
Oh, should we finish? Yeah, okay, so I'll just whiz through. Partnerships for the goals. Poverty, homeless, hunger, they go beyond financial. We need to gather data. More easily achieved through partnerships with third sector education following max care. We need to work with other island communities as well. Yes, so it's the UK mindset worries me an awful lot. So when we were looking at the how we're going to move to more sustainable renewables, they went to a UK company to try and get information, whereas if we'd have looked at maybe what they're doing with the islands in Scotland and with other island communities that have managed to do it, we'd have got much better data to be able to make things. You know, it's where we look for our information is important. And this is one for you, Joe. There's that third pillar of research for biosphere. It's really important, isn't it? You know, so we need to make sure that we've got, and we're doing a lot of work on the blue carbon, we're doing an awful lot of research. It's not that we're not doing research on it, but it's really important that we build a very strong, high-level research society. You can probably read quick and I can read out. So yes, it's just bringing things together so we can get all our data together. So quality education, by global standards, we're doing fine. We do need to work more on the high-level research things. Gender equality, I've just been listening to Katrina. So recently, but only since 2021, we're doing all right in politics, but where the balance is the childcare is the bit that you are still expected. You can do what you like, but you're still expected to have that second job of coming back and organising things and doing things like that. So we need a little bit of gender parity in how we balance the roles. And we're likely to get clean sanitation if they eventually stop polluting in that season, which is in hand, I believe. Yeah, so we're getting the living wage in. We are working on economic growth. Life with low water and life on land, biosphere, we're doing a really good job on that. Peace, justice and strong institutions. In general, yes, on the island it's fine, but we are sort of complicit with a lot of things that aren't great, that are going on just because of the way that we structure our financial things. So we need to strengthen and tighten up what damage we might be doing globally by some of the things that we're doing at the minute. So there's a question mark on that. And affordable and clean energy, we'll just have to see how we go. So we've started making commitments, we've started doing things. We might get there, we might not. Sustainable cities and communities, again, it depends on what we're going to do with the data, it depends on how we move, it's possible. Responsible consumption and production, well, you know, we've still got the coal-fired plant going on, and the energy from waste plant actually creates another, you know, it takes the waste, but it recreates a quarter of that amount of waste it's recycling, so it's really quite causing a problem. Climate action, again, we'll have to wait and see. We've got by 2030. I think the Blue Carbon Project is a really great way forward from that. We're doing a lot with the peatlands, restoring the peatlands. What we're contributing internationally is pitiful. We've for some reason got the decimal dot in the wrong place. So it should be 0.5, I think, should it? But we've got 0.05 that we give to international aid. I mean, yes, it's yeah. So you look at it and you go, oh, that's this. Oh, hang on, where's this dot gone? So there's quite a bit that we can do to help contribute, because it's a global problem. We can't just focus on our island. Anybody that was in the keynote this morning will know that. So we have 13 which are challenging or significantly challenging, but we excel in some, and our social goals are where we've got the problem. We haven't really started collecting that data. And so you've got to collect the data and then look at it and then analyse it and then come up with things. So we're quite a long way from actually tackling our social